Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. And in today's episode, we are going to be looking at more of the plague, of course. And before we do that, we're going to start off with the ideology map. And there are two things that are going to be happening here. One of them is the country going to fascism. But first, there are some of the unions that need to have their marks erased, so I'm just going to do that for now. They're a democracy, it's democracy. Down here, they have gone over all, these guys, since they unified, these guys, we'll talk about them in a little bit. These guys are actually kind of complicated. But fascism is going to grow, and it grows into North America once, and it's actually going to take over this country. There was an election here, and it was rigged by the communists and the fascists. But the fascists ended up winning, and even though these two were really close allies once, that was mostly in World War III because it was fascism and communism together. But now that's kind of changed. And now there's a new ideology that we need to talk about. And this is something I have just created, but it's going to take place in the world of Wixo. And it's a dark blue circle. And I've chosen dark blue because it is sort of a democracy, but it has democratic ideals, but it's not exactly democracy. And you'll see what I mean, because we are welcoming because now we are welcoming, let's just see, okay, is it the same size? Okay, yep, it is. Now we are welcoming unionism. So this is something I've made. Of course, there is a unionism in real life, which is like political bodies coming together to form a union, which is what a union means. And there's also other definitions. But the one I am going to be using for unionism is one I'm going to make up. And what I am going to be using it as is basically... It basically just means they want to unite all the peoples together under one banner, but they're not really trying to do it aggressively. They're trying to do it peacefully. So it's kind of like the goals of everybody, basically, but it's more of that's their main goal instead of just trying to have democratic values or communist or fascist or dictatorship or something like that. Those are their ideals. And, it's pretty popular. That's why this whole union thing happened between the three countries right here. So, that is our update for today in the ideology layer. Of course, there are some people that we need to talk about. Like, for instance, these guys, Northern Mongolian Republic. They have been that's not right. They have been a false democracy for this whole time since they've been formed, but now they've changed it to true democracy. So that is our update for today. And of course we don't have all these guys. Basically all these guys are false democracies. But now, we're going to take a look off of this, and we're going to look up with the plague that's been going on. And as we know, it has spread a lot, and everywhere is infected. It's really bad. But it'll be continuing to spread today, but hopefully not too much. But we're going to go ahead and look up here in Asia. By the end of this episode, I'm just going to say all this area would be gone. There's no way it's made it this long. Even though there's no one really living here, there's no one traveling out here, I'm just going to count it as all taken. Now we need to talk about that flight that happened onto this Chinese island, which I do not know the name of. But it's going to quickly spread throughout Vietnam. And once it takes over the island and makes it to the mainland, that's where it gets really bad. And they decide they're going to close off their capital. And this is actually, this is very effective. For one, because they're just closing off the area. And they're starting to go up the shorelines, like, they're starting to protect the shorelines. I mean, it's not like they have, like, officers patrolling the areas, but, like, anywhere that you can, like, make, like maybe there's a ship that might come, like, anywhere where you can, like, sell your ship and arrive to the island, you know, is closed off down in the south. And they're slowly starting to make their way up toward the north. Not that fast, though. Probably about this fast. But we forget that the play is insanely big. It's a humongous thing. It's taking over everywhere. And now China has become infected. So what they're going to do is, in a last effort, they're going to be able to barely close off the ports right up here. The communist Chinese, they seem to be fine. And, it looks like they're not even going to close their borders. They're that confident that it won't reach them. So, China decides to pull a little naughty, they decide to pull a little trick on the communists. And they start fortifying this side. And their plan is to make a passageway up to the communist Chinese. But they would infect their own by doing this, so it's not ethical at all. But to them, the government thinks it's worth it. What they do is, they take the already infected, and they get them to come up here. So, like, they've already evacuated the people, but now it has reached the communist Chinese border. But it doesn't spread. In fact, it actually goes away. So, now that we're seeing it go away, now everybody's asking, well, why is it going away? And to that I say, you'll have to find out later. If I do release the lore of the series, if ever. No, these guys are mad. There's not really, like, infected people living here. There's just the people they sent through. So they are able to, they're able to cut off and fortify this area. And now they've decided that they are just, they're gonna do research on these guys. So they bring them all to a lab in the center. Every single infected person or everybody else in the fortified area. They bring them all to this lab and they're starting to do research and they're developing a cure. And they're getting a lot of help from places like Korea, who almost made it all the way out with the virus. Speaking of virus in Korea, we're just gonna have it being eaten away. Show something like this. Maybe this will work. But anyway, it breaks through some of the barriers right here. And it's starting to make it more to the mainland. Communist Chinese, that's a quick talk about it. As we all know, they have been working on Project Dominate on this island chain. And it is going very well. And they have moved the project to a different location. But anyway, we're going to look back up on the Chinese, who are trying their best to fortify this area, and they're trying to cut the virus off. the virus is faster than that. And this little roadblock will stop them for like maybe like a week. But this gives them enough time to go up, and they pretty well could enclose it. And they are able to keep it down. But the northern half of their country isn't fortified yet, so they're going to start trying to do that. Meanwhile, down south, it leaks into the newly formed Malaysia, who's had a lot of difficulties in the past. They used to be strong, if you remember, and then all that stuff happened into the Cold War era. But they're back again. Something bad, though, is that these guys aren't strong. Their economy is collapsing. And we all know what that leads to, which happened already twice already. And it is full-on collapse. They have collapsed. It is final. Ooh, what are these borders? Oh, I need to erase these in my free time. Jeez, this looks disgusting. Okay, well, the point is, they've collapsed. There we go. They've collapsed. They're gone. Adios. They are still they've collapsed, but a government has been put in place by the Chinese, the Korean, and the Red Team to help them try to get back on their feet. To be honest, it's not working. I guess the Malaysian team wasn't really cut out to being really cut out to being alive, I guess. Okay, that looks a little better now. Doesn't look like an eyesore. And now, I'm going to take another moment just to talk about Project Dominate. And they have actually, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. They have shipped a piece of the project over to somewhere else. That's all I'm going to say for now. But the virus is going to continue all throughout Malaysia. And now it is reaching down here into Indonesia, but it also stops. Same thing with the Communist Chinese. Speaking of the Communist Chinese, it looks like whatever they were doing, it worked for a little bit, but the virus, pretty much just came back along the border. This time it's really here, and it actually spreads into this other part of China. And it'll start trying to spread up here. But by this point, it is already, the border is already probably made up to right there. On this side, however, it's probably made, yeah, they probably finished off this area, deeming it fortified. So now the virus has nowhere to go and it's stuck inside communist China. This has got definitely not what they were suspecting. They thought they were immune to it. Turns out they weren't. So, they're barely able to fortify their government, their capital city in time, and they end up fortifying a little bit more. They're barely able to, however. And the rest of their country just falls over to it. Meanwhile, these guys, yeah, the virus takes them over as well. Before that happens, however, I would say they're able to get this capital. They're able to get both capitals and some of the surrounding areas because they knew it was coming. But they're not able to get really anywhere else. So now the virus has basically taken all of Asia, all of North America, all of Europe, and all of South America. So now there's only 2 continents that are safe. And we're going to go to one of those continents right now, and that is the blue team. The blue team is going to be continuing to fortify their country, and they reach the southern border down here, and they start making attempts to the other side to help that border. It isn't finished, but it is almost done. Now, we see another flight happening. It's always just flights, and it's actually the Communist Chinese. They're going to fly all the way over from a little airport, and they're gonna go that way. But they're gonna go into the heart of Africa, into this country where they think they'll be safe. Turns out they're not. They were not. They were infected, which seems to be the case in a lot of countries. But they immediately start getting overwhelmed because they didn't think the virus would be able to make it to here. The capital is overran, and there are new symptoms of the virus. One of these symptoms is it's very lethal. It's basically spewing blood out of their mouth. So that's not very good. There lots of blood loss. A lot of people are dying now, but the cures have been more worked on because they know more of the symptoms. Meanwhile, this country just completely falls. These guys had maybe 3 days to prepare. Well, they don't really have any time. This guy, however, he had already been prepared for this. So by the time they get news of that it arrived in the medium in that area, they're gonna go ahead and protect their fortified. They're gonna go ahead and fortify these areas, and they're probably able to get to something around this before this part of the country falls. The orange team also falls. And it's just going to continue south. And then it goes into the green team. And it doesn't really go anywhere. It gets pretty far. And it's probably been a little while by now. Probably about this point, efforts have arrived. And they started working on the middle area. And they've linked up with the middle. And both sides. Naming this area fortified. So now all the blue team is fortified. Allies, though, however, aren't the best fortified. They just have their capitals fortified. So this isn't very good. And the blue team has their coast a little bit too. But by the time it's just going to come steamrolling in. And by this time, we're probably not going to look. The virus is probably done for today's episode. We got one more area to look up on, though. We're going to see it moving into Indonesia. The same thing happened with Communist China. It worked for a few weeks, and then it just stopped. So now it's spreading down south. But by the time it does arrive down south, they were prepared. This whole southern area, including these islands and all of this, is fortified. And then go and fortify Borneo, or Mega Borneo. And they fortify a great deal of it. And they go ahead and fortify Java as well. So, at this point, it can't really pass. It's got all the areas where it could pass to. So now it's just gonna stay here. It's gonna go along the dam. And that is the end of it for today's episode. The plague, anyway. Now we can turn the plague off. And there isn't really anything happening right now. Governments are in chaos. There isn't really anything happening. But the fascists think that the communists have the cure instead of democracies. So now they're all yelling at each other. And they're yelling at the communists, why don't you share it with us? And yeah, it's not good. But that is going to pretty much do it for today's episode. If you enjoyed, please show your support. And if you want to see more Wixo, then comment down below. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.